The Broad Perspective Network is not responsible for the content of the following program. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to The Broad Perspective here on the Broad Perspective Network. I am Vivian Komori.
And I'm Katie Curley-Nelson.
And we're being joined today with our guest who is in the house, Jakub Dolezal.
Hello, everybody.
And we are so excited because he's one of our favorites. He and his brother Joseph are definitely two people that we just love to chat with. And Jakub was so kind to come up to our studio today. And we have a lot to talk about.
Of course.
Yes. And so the Broaden Your Horizons segment today, we're going to ask him to join in with us and chat about the Hermit card, which we pulled from a daily tarot reading. And it said, it affirms that my alter ego today is revealed in the doubter, whose superpower to reconsider acts as a beacon to a second chance through soul searching. The truth is out there, so leave room for uncertainty, isolation without aim, or to avoid or linger among past emotional baggage, is to navigate by a sign which obscures validation and burdens perspective. It's all catching up. But the results to date are not enough. It's only by illumination of our failures and this personal quest that truth can start to measure success or recognize an opportunity for trusting the heart and stepping back into circulation. Look to past experience for strength or enlightenment, or suffer in silence, or look for trouble speculating or wandering in the dark until the chance is lost. So, what do you guys think about that?
It's very cool. Something that I've actually been trying to work on myself is just kind of letting go a little bit, stop trying to control everything, and actually go with the flow a little bit more like we've talked about before, and kind of not hanging on to that baggage. You know, that baggage that you've been carrying around with you, and using that to make decisions for future decisions, and all that's doing is altering your future decisions. Let's just let that go and really go with the pure thinking and the pure heart.
Oh, that sounds so easy to do if
right?
you could only let it all go. Right. It's, you know, I think that's a really interesting card you pulled, you know. I mean, the minute I walked in the studio, Vivian, me and you were talking about, I was telling you that I kind of feel like stepping away from the whole conspiracy thinking and the whole spiritual thinking. Because, you know, although I am a spiritual person, there's a lot of interest in that area. The people that I've been dabbling with and learning from and learning about, it seems like it's becoming a whole nother Hollywood, a whole nother fairy tale that they've been wanting to sell. So it feels like instead of socializing and interacting with all these people and taking in their energy, I just want to step back, you know, take that deep breath, you know, the hermit, just get away from everybody, every other energy that's infiltrating upon mine, and get back to my core, get back to my understanding.
I think that's what we have to do, and I think that that's what this card is talking about and why it seemed to, I was drawn to it, because so many times we take things at face value, especially if we have decided that some particular person or movement is our panacea for all that is right and well, and we don't really look at it through objective eyes, and especially we don't look at it through doubting eyes, because we want to believe. Right. We want to swallow hook, line, and sinker what we're being fed, because there's something that they or the movement has said that appealed to us from the very get-go. Therefore, that first thing that attracted us must mean that everything else they say is right on target. And perhaps what this card is saying, that maybe we need to step back and really look at it all objectively, and certainly with an air of doubt.
No, definitely. It sounds something like, you know, we need to step back and actually learn from ourselves and understand the entire perspective from ourselves. Because from what we all want, the reason we're into these genres, the reason you have the broad perspective, it's not about a particular goal. It's about knowing that there's something greater than what we've been taught. You know, and maybe if it was 100 years ago, we'd have these amazing leaders that could push us in a certain direction. You know, for example, like amazing men like Gandhi or Malcolm X, you know, or Martin Luther King. These leaders that actually could teach you something, and it wasn't just about fame. You know, men that have actually suffered, learned through experience, and then taught you about it and told you a direction to go. Instead, today, we have a bunch of people that claim to have been here, claim to have done that, no experience at all, just something to sell and monetize on. And unfortunately, that puts us at a child's state. It puts us at a child's state because we never actually learn. We constantly keep burning our fingers instead of actually learning from that one point. And why? It's because we're assuming we've already experienced something. We've already assumed that we've taken that next step when actually we just keep falling back an extra step because of our leaders, because of the people we're giving so much credit to.
I agree.
Well said.
He gets it.
You get it.
Sometimes.
But that's the thing. I think instead of just teaching our children to read, let's teach them to question. You know what I mean? Don't just give them the words. Let them really figure out the answers. And I think that's where we don't allow our children to question anything.
No,
These
we
are the
don't.
rules. This is how it is. And this is what you need to believe. And you're not allowed to question it.
Well, that's our educational system because you were tested and you better get those answers correct because if you don't, you are not as good. You're less
Exactly.
than.
And you're talking about answers that really don't mean anything because answers constantly change because it's all theories, it's all opinion. All of our knowledge is opinion based. Nothing in this world is fact. It constantly changes. It's always going to change, just like how Einstein explained light, understanding light at the speed that it goes is about your perspective. If you're actually light, it's traveling in each direction at its constant speed. But if you happen to be standing somewhere, for example, the way his example that he used was there's two men on a train, each one on the other end of the train on the other end of the train at equal distance. The man in the middle is opening a watch, or no, he's lighting a lighter. And the flame goes on. Both men on each side see the light turn on at the same time. However, there's a third person, a third perspective, and that perspective is standing outside of the train. And as the train's passing by, the person that's witnessing the light goes on, the light turning on, is actually seeing the light hit the person on their left, or the part of the train that's coming is seeing it go faster to them as opposed to catching up to the person of part of the train that has already passed by. So a lot of all of this stuff is perspective.
It's relative to the observer, and that's
Exactly.
why it's
There
the
you
theory of
go.
relativity.
Very good. Very good. You're right on. And I just lost whatever it was. Oh, I know what it was. I was talking to Alexander Holub last night. He's been on our show. Dr. Holub is professor and author of Throwing Pebbles in
Brilliant.
Still Water, yes, and From Victim to Victor, a lot of books. He was telling me this story of his brother when they were in school, and they went to a religious school, and it was being told to them that if you are cremated, if you choose to have your body cremated after your death, that you will not be allowed into heaven. And his brother, who was I think 6 years old at the time, says, "But what if I die in a fire?"
Interesting.
I thought that's brilliant for a kid to make that,
Thought it all the way through.
to think that through and realize, well, there's a difference. There's a difference. And would that then preclude this child from going to heaven if he dies in a fire?
Right?
Well, I thought that was a very insightful question for such a young child. And it's
I wonder if he got any answers to that.
that's a good question. I don't think that Alex actually told
I mean,
me.
how could they answer it? Is
Yeah,
what I'm saying. Like
exactly.
they come up with these things, and then how do you answer a question like that?
That takes critical thinking and not the emotional good, bad, this, reward and punishment type of
Right. I
things.
think it would probably go into the realm of what we've talked about before as intention and the karmic, the karmic underlying energy that's associated with all that. I suppose if you're choosing to be cremated, that's a choice, whereas if you're dying in a fire, that certainly was not your choice. So I don't know, but I just thought that was very insightful for a 6-year-old kid to make
Yeah, to
that
ask
connection.
that.
And unfortunately, we don't encourage that in our children. We don't encourage critical thinking. We encourage roboticism. We encourage them to be able to study and learn what we have spoon-fed them so that they can pass a test.
Regurgitate it, not really understand
Right.
it, not really even care about it.
And you two are still assuming that they were taught the way you were taught when you were in school. It just keeps getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
Good point. That's a good
no
point.
discipline in class, kids screaming, it's out of control. Because, of course, the teachers can't. They have no way of actually disciplining. So if you do get to the education, you're lucky. And that's why, you have other cultures and other races that, come to this country that excel so great, from Russians to the Chinese, because back where they're from, there's a lot of discipline and, a lot of hard critical thinking. And when they come here, it's just a breeze for them.
Yeah, it's interesting because we chose to homeschool our youngest son for about the last 6 years of his schooling. And I've always had self-doubt, was that the right thing to do? I've always not criticized,
Critique.
question,
Okay.
critique, myself. Well, is this the right thing to do? And I've had those doubts throughout, and even up until probably the last 6 months or so. But as I sit with my son at night, we do a crossword puzzle every night, and I am so impressed with his skills and what he's learned. And I thought, I did not teach him that. I know he didn't. How did he deduce that answer? How did he figure this out? How did he go through these skills? And I think part of it is just allowing him the freedom to use these skills without being spoon-fed
Wasn't that a true teacher, though?
information. Well, he was pretty much self-taught. I really can't take much credit, but I'm really proud of what he's learned and who he's become.
A lot of that, is based on the person. I mean, it's a lot of it, you could fight a child all the time to learn, but unless they see the importance of what that intelligence will lead to them, it's like they don't want to do it. I mean, case in point, my brother, I'm telling you, probably up to 14, 15, he protested school. Absolutely protested reading, protested just school. Protested. And he crossed the border at like 16, 17, and he's read more books than I guarantee you the majority of doctorates that teach, at universities. And, it's all self-taught, from whether it's music or learning something, from getting into quantum mechanics or whatever, he's taught himself, and I think, when you get into school, I guess today's school, the important thing that's taught there is to socialize. But even there, we don't get to socialize because it's more of a, popularity contest now than a social learning.
Well, yes, and you have to question that as well, especially with the bullying issues and all those kinds of things. So, I don't know, but the one thing, and I'd like us to delve into this is probably a little deeper. I don't know if there's time. Maybe we'll have to do this after we come back from break. But about the formal education versus the self-education, because I think you tell somebody like your brother who has self-educated is probably much more astute and educated than those who are, once again, spoon-fed a curriculum in a formal setting. And unfortunately, we don't recognize that, don't value it, don't respect it, and it's unless we have that formal degree to go with it, which is so unfortunate. And I would like to deal with that a little bit more. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in just a moment with more of the broad perspective in our visit with Jakub Dolezal. Stay tuned.
Do you ever wake up and ask yourself what's really going on in the world you live in? It's time for you to be aware. It's the #1 alternative website on the planet. TruthIsScary.com. Daily stories. Log on daily to get the latest information on the stories that radio and TV wouldn't dare to cover. Experience our curriculum with over 20 topics from government conspiracies and extraterrestrials to meditation and nutrition, celebrity interviews. Watch exclusive videos with your favorite celebrities and find out what their alternative views are. It's your source for the information you won't find in the mainstream media. It's TruthIsScary.com. Log on today and be aware. TruthIsScary.com.
Welcome back to The Broad Perspective here on the Broad Perspective Network. I'm Vivian Komori.
And I'm Katie Curley Nelson.
And we're continuing our chat with Jakub Dolezal. And we left off talking about education and our personal opinions on it. And, of course, during the break, we get into more conversation. And it's like, we got to save it because this is worth talking about. And so he was talking about the Jewish tradition and when they study the Torah. Go ahead.
Yes, what's interesting about the Jewish culture and the way they're educated, and what I say is a really important thing about when they're being educated when they're young, how their brain thinks, is that as they're reading the Torah, as they're studying the Torah, there are classes where You know, they have to rewrite as they're reading, and you have to understand, why is this being said? You know, why was this said? What's the reasoning for it? What's the ethics behind it? And therefore you start developing a critically thinking brain instead of just you have three choices, A, B, or C. What is it? You know, and that doesn't teach you to critically think. That just teaches you to find the right answer, and then you value none of the knowledge.
Right. I agree.
And even more than that, the thing that troubles me is the public perception and public hierarchy of you're not enough if you don't have advanced degrees. That certainly if you don't graduate from high school, you cannot be an intelligent or smart person, or certainly if you don't have a bachelor's degree or master's degree. And now everybody I know has a PhD, which is great. I respect that. I do. But the thing that I'm getting to is that there seems to be, that is another way to belittle someone that you think is perhaps not as good as you, or that you're better than them because you've done this.
Another form of classism, basically.
Another form of classism, and the ability to just to be, well, the word isn't racist. Big it is. No, I'm not sure what the word is.
Smartest.
Whatever. Smartism. It's smartism.
Smartism.
Yeah, it's smartism. Because therefore, if you have these formal educational degrees, then you are better than someone who doesn't. And the reality, I serve on a commission with a guy. I think he said he had sixth grade formal education. He's smart. The guy is brilliant, and I'd put his knowledge and his skills up against most anyone.
Exactly.
And that's where I struggle. And then I serve with another woman who has 20 years of education. You know, she's got advanced degrees. But there is that, I'm better than you because of that.
You know, I can tell you just on the basis of, you know, I'll bring it down to something that I can really show a great example of. For example, cars. You know, one of my hobbies is restoring cars from 71 Chevy Corvettes to, you know, I like to dabble in diesel engines now because of the miles per gallon. You know, I've been messing with a lot of the engines because you pretty much start at like 40 miles a gallon. But if you know how to tune it, you can get to like 60 miles a gallon. And, you know, and that's consistent. That's not based on if you're driving in city or highway or whatever. But what I'm getting at with this example is I self-taught myself all of that. You know, all of it was, crap, this broke. Okay, I got to figure it out. And I mean, I've gone to dealers, I've gone to forums and everything, people that have been educated about this stuff, that, you know, to be a Volkswagen mechanic, you have to go like to these courses, and there's a special way of doing it. And I'm not just, there's a bunch of different cars from Mercedes to Lamborghinis. I've worked on them all. It's hobbies. I've always found out that nobody had the answers. Like, nobody, well, you know, if you bring it here, we'll hook it up to the computer. And even when they hook it up to the computer, after swapping out like 16 sensors, spending $1,000, still, the simplest thing it was an O-ring in your system that was leaking, you know, for the turbo. And all of this stuff, I've actually come to the point where people ask my opinion on how to fix a lot of these cars, how to tune this. And it's all self-taught, you know. I figured out all the problems myself, dealt with the hardships. And, you know, I think that's where a really interesting intelligence comes from, is dealing with the hardships, having to critically think, and then that just stays with you forever. You don't ever forget that. You know, you might forget when somebody discovered something else, or, you know, whenever there was the Mississippi Purchase, or, you know,
right,
whatever it was. You'll forget the date, but the certain things that are important, they stick with you.
I think you're right. And I so respect that. I respect that ingenuity of figuring out these things and having the skills to do that. One of the things that is so amazing about my husband is he does that kind of thing as well. And I remember before we were married, and I was out here visiting him from Colorado, and we had purchased a garage door opener. Now, he had just moved into a house, and it was very sparse. He didn't have much in the way of tools or equipment or anything. And the next thing you know, he's got a ladder made out of boxes that he was climbing up on. And I was just amazed at how he installed that garage door opener with virtually nothing to do. And I thought, oh, that's the guy for me.
Right, innovative.
Yeah, he was innovative. And he's been that way ever since. That's what he does. He figures out how to do things. But that's really rare. And especially in our generation. Of course, you're younger than us, Jacob. But seriously, my friends, not only... hate to say this, not only do they not have skills as far as traditional things or typical things at all, neither of them, their husbands, are people don't know how to do
I know.
anything.
Most men don't know how to change their tire, and I have a
Yeah.
lot of friends, man. I'm telling you, and they're ripped. They're like they work
Oh,
out
yeah.
all the
Oh,
time,
yeah.
and
They go
this
to the
and that,
gym.
the nicest
Yeah.
car. And I was driving with them once, and their tire popped out, and they're like, "Well, I gotta call AAA or something." I'm like, "Dude, it's just your tire. You got the spare in the back." They're like, "Well, how do you change that?" And I'm like, "Wow, the simplest thing your dad should have taught you didn't." Wow. You
Yeah,
know?
no, that is very true. And
But that's the kind of thinking that's not encouraged in our school systems. And I've talked about this before. I think there's a reason for it. I don't think they want free thinking, innovative thinkers to make it to the top. They don't want those people to be the leaders because those people need to be controlled. So if you go to Harvard, you make it to the Ivy League, you've gone through, they've weeded out those thinkers. They've weeded out creativity. They've already weeded all that out. Now they've got pure puppets in office that they can control. And I think it's on purpose.
well, that's interesting.
No, definitely. And it gets back to, again, the value of thinking, critically thinking. Because the thing about it is people are, oh, well, okay, so he changed his garage door, so he changed his tire, who cares? Well, what you got to understand is when you think with that process where this needs to get done, I don't have anybody to call, it depends on me, then that kind of stuff, when you transfer it into other parts of your life, becomes really important. When you have children, how to deal with your mate, whether it's a man or a woman, learning how
That
to
takes
deal with
real
those.
critical thinking.
Yeah, exactly. it does sometimes because you have to step outside of yourself and understand a different perspective. And then you get into, like my brother, because of the way we had to think, grow up, and do certain things, figuring out things, how to deal with law, how to deal, avoiding needing lawyers to deal with like contracts and all this other stuff. That's all from the basis of having to deal with cars or other things we had to learn on our own.
No, I totally get what you're saying, and I think it's wonderful. It's just rare, Jacob. It is so rare, seriously.
It is.
And it's tragic on every level. I mean, even if they could teach them in the schools, which they used to be able to, when I was in school, we at least learned how to cook, or we had auto mechanics, and we had woodworking, and we had sewing, and the girls and the boys would switch off and off. I'm not trying to be sexist and say, the girls had to learn this and the boys had to learn this. So we'd each have to take some of the other person's classes, and we could, if we wanted to, take the whole thing. But they've taken those out of the schools even, so they're not even teaching the basics. And it's still down to the math and the science, which I know we need, and I know they're important, and I get all that. But the practical things that I think would enable us to survive are gone.
And people are like, what do you mean survive? I'm doing great. I can go to Walmart and have my tires changed. Well, the thing about it is if you're in this thought process of what's going on in the world, if you're even listening to this show, you're probably thinking there is a bigger picture and there is a chance that something might go wrong. There is a chance that America might not be as wealthy and spoiled as it has been for much longer. So the question is like, what if our economy really did crash? And I mean really did crash. What if the realtors and the banks and everything actually put out all the houses that actually have been foreclosed on and the market just crashed and your money had no value? Would you be able to survive? And I mean, if you can't change your own tire, I don't know how, okay, you're going to say, how does this translate? But how are you going to grow your own vegetables or anything else you need to do?
How are you going to preserve them?
Exactly.
It's interesting you would say that. Just in today, I was reading in The Week magazine a viewpoint. No one in the middle class imagines they could die at any minute. The middle class idea is quite the reverse. That the world can be controlled, risk eliminated, fate mastered. We're going to live a long time and the world is not going to take us by surprise. Has there ever been another group of people in all of human history that's possessed that kind of attitude? Of course, there are reasons it's emerged when it has. Our enormous modern life expectancy, our inconceivable prosperity, our overwhelming military power, but we live in a bubble. And most people in the world, in history, and even in our own country, are on the outside.
The bubble's going to pop.
The bubble's going to pop. And what will people do?
No, what will people do? But I think the first step is I don't think people realize that the bubble can pop. I mean, we've only had certain scare tactics that have happened Hollywood style, from an economic crash that we survived, which it wasn't an economic crash. It was nothing compared to what the Great Depression was. And I don't think people would be able to deal with what the Great Depression was. I mean, here in today's world, we have people that invest in a pyramid scheme and they lose some money and then they commit suicide. So how are you gonna deal with when you have your families and you can't go to the grocery store because everything's sold out from mass panic, everybody buying nonsense. Like, how are you gonna deal with that? And people don't even begin to think about that because we live in a spoiled society. I don't ever think personally that there's gonna be a doomsday thing that's just gonna happen. Whether it's the apocalypse or you're gonna have like World War III stuff blows up. I think at the point where we're at with society, what's being done behind the scenes is a lot more manipulative and a lot more precise. You just have a lot of pawns that you can get rid of. And whatever it's going to be, whether it's going to be GMO foods or whatever else is going to kill you, or whatever's put in the water, or who knows. I don't think you're going to see that kind of a catastrophe. But at the end of the day, if you don't realize that there is some sort of issue, you're never going to start defending yourself and building your own personal spiritual and mental immune system. So when things do crash, you're going to collapse because you don't have that self-confidence, that self-understanding of yourself that you can handle yourself in a situation.
That stability. That's true.
You just said something so profound. That spiritual and mental immune system. Mm-hmm. Seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously. I think, at least, you've put something, words on what Katie and I have been trying to do through this whole thing. We're trying to help people develop immunity. Not that we're responsible for that, but we're trying to help people have that ability to build some sort of spiritual and mental immunity.
While working on ourselves
While we're working on ourselves at the same time. Really, it's all about us. But really, isn't that's the bottom line? That's the core to everything. Because like you said, when the going gets tough, people freak out. People freak out. They don't know what to do.
Emotionally are unstable and can't handle it.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in all genres of life, it's a shame where we're at in today's society. We have a lot of false images and a lot of false respect for the wrong things. And I think where these movements are going, what's important about them is they give you that basis knowledge to help you understand yourself. I think the unfortunate part where when we started this sort of show between each other and started talking was where I kind of want to step back from this stuff because I just believe what this information, like I'm not speaking about you, Vivian, and Katie, not at all. What I'm speaking about is the other people that we have as leaders where it comes to spiritual stuff, whether, I'm not going to get into exact names, but the things that they're teaching, where, they think they understand meditation and yoga and they start talking about your chakras when they don't understand that there's a symbolic theory behind that. Or when people start scaring people about UFOs and then there's other people that, I speak to fairies, and I have like 13 guardians and, all this stuff's happening and I can read everybody's mind and, I can see the future. And you know what? There's a lot of things that are highly capable as a human being. Unfortunately, you don't possess them because you're acknowledging you possess them. You wouldn't be telling everybody you possess this stuff if you actually did, because if you had this kind of power, it's very dangerous. And a mind that's slowly developing into understanding this stuff would recognize you don't just go spitting this stuff to everybody.
You would be the hermit.
Exactly.
That's exactly right.
Exactly. And that's where we're at, your card, the hermit, taking that step back.
See how nicely you tied that in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so impressed. That's called critical thinking. It's called critical speaking.
Sometimes.
That's awesome. Sometimes. Okay, well, we have a few minutes left. Also, one of the things in this magazine that I was reading today while I was waiting for my son at the doctor's, the futility of banning books. And it talks about how the minute they ban a book, how the sales soar. One such case recently, which you may have read about, was the nun who wrote the book about sex and things and all this kind of stuff, and the Catholic Church condemned it. And of course, at the time, before this condemnation, her book was at number 142,982 on Amazon's sales list. The minute the Vatican censored it, it rose to number 16.
What does that say about us?
It says we should write a book and get somebody to condemn it. That's what it says to me.
Well, exactly, but again, it gets into that. It gets to that point. Does that stuff happen by accident? Did they by accident condemn it? Because I really think again, I put myself in the perspective. I'm not anywhere on the immense intellectual scale of, let's say, what the Catholic Church is, because I'm telling you the library and the artifacts that they have under the Catholic Church, the Vatican, is got to be amazing.
Well, they are controlling it all after all, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So at the end of the day is, if I could think that you don't want to ban somebody or give somebody any sort of publicity, because any publicity is good publicity, then they have to know what they're doing by banning that book. There's probably some sort of reason that they want that to get out.
Critical thinking once again.
Yeah.
See, that didn't dawn on me. I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Touche. Point well made.
And it's twofold, too, because now they've also covered their own behind because they don't condone that kind of thing. But then they've also released the information actually under them.
Exactly. That's what you're saying is, they can't directly talk about sex and the subject that way.
Right.
So somebody else, a scapegoat, does it.
Right.
That's how, that's probably
Meanwhile,
how it's
she gets rich while doing it.
Exactly.
Right. Well, she does, but of course, where does her money go? Let's go figure. That's probably it. The book wasn't making enough money. They could use the infusion of cash. Therefore, let's bring it up to number 16, and the money goes right back into the church.
Exactly. And then at the end of the day, somebody assassinates her, and then they make her into a saint, and this beautiful circle's happened,
And then all of a sudden, a new book surfaces that she wrote before she died. No.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Exactly. And it'll start out at number 1, and we're going to take a break.
Now we've just given them an idea.
There you go. We'll be back in just a minute with more of our conversation on the broad perspective with Jakub Dolezal.
The 12th Hour. A show literally about everything. A candid discussion between friends about their different perspectives on what they think may be going on.
Or what is not going on.
With so many different areas of information being given out, we attempt to put together the puzzle pieces to create the broad perspective of the whole picture.
Welcome back to The Broad Perspective here on the Broad Perspective Network. I'm Vivian Komori.
And I'm Katie Curley Nelson.
And we're continuing our visit with Jakub Dolezal, solving all the world's problems. Another thing I wanted to talk about is in today's paper, there was an article about a man who is facing trial. And he's facing trial because he beat a priest. Now, the irony here is this priest abused him and his brother when they were 7 and 4 years old. They were raped in the woods and forced to have oral sex with each other while the priest, Linder, his name is Linder, watched. Now, this priest has been accused by more than a dozen people, including the priest's own sister, nieces, and nephews, but he was never criminally charged. So the priest is now in a retirement home for the
Elderly.
Well, no, for priests. So
just for priests.
Just for
gotcha.
priests. And this man, the abused child, is now 44 years old, and he went to the retirement home and beat the crap out of the priest. Didn't kill him, but beat him. And so now he is facing trials of abuse, elder abuse. So let's talk about that. Is that justice?
Well, if you want me to touch upon it.
Of course
well,
we do.
I'm somebody that believes in eye for an eye. I really strongly do believe in that. And I think the reason is because once you have your first experience with eye to an eye, it might only take your second experience with eye to an eye when you slap someone, you get slapped back, that ouch, it hurts. I'm not going to cause problems like that out in the world. Now, the problem is when you get into this situation is, when they were kids, this happened, and then you have him at 44, which is numbers of years later, he goes and, beats the heck out of him. Mm-hmm. Now, is it justified? See, you're getting into a touchy subject because depending on how you answer this is, depending on how people are going to judge you, because everybody wants to be politically correct and everybody wants to care for the victim. Now, do I think somebody that messes with kids that young, I really think, any kind of messing around, whether it's beating, sexual, or mental abuse, mental abuse screws you up. That guilt, that stuff stays with you forever. Now, anybody that does that, I definitely think should be punished, and especially when you do something like that to that many kids, they're pretty much done for life. You screwed up a generation, and who knows what those kids are going to do to their kids when they have kids. Now we get to the subject of what the child or the man did when he got older. I think at that point, you kind of can't do that. I don't think it's justified anymore. I believe, I was going to say I wasn't going to say this, but I believe there was another catalyst that brought him to focus his anger in that direction. Because if it would have been sticking in his head that much, and I can tell you, I've been through 25 years old. I know that at that time frame you have a lot of energy within you. Like there's nothing you cannot do. And if that stuff would have stuck into my head that much, I would have done my damage to him then. Probably around 18, 20, and that's from personal experience. If I was going to get somebody, I was going to get them good then. Now, at that age, it's like you had all that time where you could have gone to the cops like everybody does now or whatever. At this point, I don't think it's vigilante. I think vigilante justice. I think at this point, it's, turning your focus onto something and taking out the rest of the rage from life out on him. Because I'm sure what he did to this kid probably started a number of atomic explosions in this kid's life. Not being able to deal with people, not trusting people, and it just built up. And who knows what happened at 44? Did he lose his wife because he just can't have a relationship with someone because he doesn't trust them? Did he lose his house? Da-da-da. And when he got to the critical thinking about it, he's like, I'm going to go after this guy. He ruined my entire life. But the thing about it is now, does even beating the hell out of him solve anything? Because the guy's probably at a senile stage. It's like you're probably, it's hard because it's, I'm looking at it from the outside. If it was me, would I act different? I think if I'd have that rage, I'd go farther than beating the hell out of. I think the life ending would be what the outcome would be. It wouldn't be just beating someone. So you get into a critical thing. It's like beating the hell out of doesn't solve anything because he's still going to be pissed off at the end of the day, and now he's got to deal with more crap that
now he's in jail.
Now he's
going to deal with all that while he's in jail.
Exactly, and it's going to go on his record, and it's going to do this to him, and he's probably going to have to take anger management, all because of what this guy did. So I just think he could have gotten this guy way better a different way instead of just instantaneous gratification.
So you're saying there's a statute of limitation on revenge?
I think there is.
Well said.
Revenge is a beautiful thing. Revenge is sweet, and
But if we live our lives that way, like every little thing, not maybe to this degree, but somebody, hits your grocery cart in the store, fine, I'm going to hit their grocery cart. If we live our lives that way, is that a healthy way to live our lives?
But see, it goes into what the intentions are behind it. If it's an old lady that, she probably shouldn't even be sitting behind a car, let alone a cart. It's like if she bumps into you, it's like, okay, you can't expect because you're going to be there yourself. Now, if you have malicious people that walk by your car just to key your car because, it's an expensive car, I really think there should be something done to them because A, it'll make an example to everybody else, and B, it's like that's never going to happen again because, I understand how people have gotten to the point where I don't want you to discipline me or I don't want you to discipline my kids, don't touch my kids, but you're incapable of controlling your kids yourself. The thing about it is what people do not want to believe is we are really not that important on the universal scale of things. We are not that important, okay? And the other part of it is when we start out our lives, we're very much like animals. And I really think the majority of us are animals. I've said this before and I'll say it again. 95% of people, they are like animals. They are programmed like animals by TV, by media, by everything around them. By simple colors, they're programmed, just animals. They see a light, their eyes go wide, they freeze, it's done. And the thing about it is animals need if you misbehave, you need to correct the behavior right there and then, because that animal will forget it 30 seconds later.
That's true.
So right there and then, if somebody hits you, and I'm not going to get into the whole female-male aspect of it, but if somebody is dumb enough to raise their hand to you, they need to be corrected right there and then. And if those corrections were made, you wouldn't have stupid kids filming each other on YouTube, beating the crap out of each other, and then figuring out, oh, wow, that hurt getting hit in the face. Because you'd know that when dad slapped you upside the head, that, wow, that hurt. I don't want to do that because I'll probably get hit in the head again, and it hurts, you know? And then you don't have these things that escalate into bigger things, and then people playing video games and thinking you can shoot somebody 12 times and then their energy is gonna, you know, grow back and they're gonna revive. You know, if you took a gunshot, if you were an owner and you had a gun to defend yourself, if you took a gunshot in your thigh, or a cop too, or somewhere where it's just gonna graze you, you would be less likely to light somebody up with bullets, because you'd know one bullet does damage. And trust me, one bullet does damage. So where you see cops like firing 15, 20 times at some black guy that was reaching into his pants, that stuff's ridiculous, you know? And the reason is because if they'd have that experience with that gun, if they could critically think, and if, you know, they could clear their heads away from that adrenaline and that rush and that whatever else we have, because we're more in touch with our animal side than our spiritual, like the part that makes us human, then we'd have a whole different thing going on. And, you know, that gets into bigger pictures. You know, if things were corrected, you could maybe possibly contemplate there being peace on this planet. But at the rate we're going, there is nothing but war in our future, because nothing's being corrected. Everything's getting more perverse, more out of control. And you're just going to arrive at this point where everything's boiling. And even if at that point you recognize and you awaken and you ascend to somewhere you think you're going to ascend to, which you won't, because trust me, we'll both be here in 20 years, then we got to deal with everything. We got to deal with the pollution. We got to deal with the ethical and educational crap we filter into our children's heads. It's not going to be pretty, because we're not dealing with things right now. We're not correcting them. We're just saying, oh, you know, well, he was acting out. You know, he was just acting out. He was vocalizing himself. No, if you're in public, if you are at a grocery store, you're eating, and you bring your children in somewhere, and there's other people, nobody needs to be an audience to what your uncontrollable animal is doing and disrespecting you and slapping you. Nobody needs to witness that.
Well, I think part of the issue, though, is there's a difference between, and nobody's willing to define the line of correctiveness and abuse. And I think that is where it becomes when people, we don't want people to be abused, and then we didn't want anybody to be hit now. So instead of saying, okay, it's okay to correct your child, they're saying, okay, now nobody can hit their children, because now all of it is considered abuse, because nobody is willing to define that line.
Very good. But the reason for that is because we already don't believe hitting is good. So by the time we hit, we're already so frustrated. By the time we correct, we're already so frustrated that your perception of what's really going on is gone. You're not recognizing your strength. You're not taking into perspective your actions, what you're doing. You're not now correcting with one command or one correction. You're just going wild, all out, like blitzkrieg on a kid, which again, you know, defeats the purpose, because you're acting out of frustration. You know, the thing is, yeah, sometimes you go a little farther. So, you know, you might be a dad and you might have a little bit of a bigger boy, and, you know, you got to hit him that much harder for him to think, oh, okay. But I can tell you, my dad, he corrected me and my brother a lot. Like, if we did something wrong, and there were things we did wrong, you know,
No.
I mean, yeah, me
Hard
and him,
hard to believe, Jacob.
we'd always goof around. I mean, you can only imagine what it was. I think I'll tell you the worst part about it was we'd have to go find the garden hose, cut off a foot-long piece of the garden hose, and bring it to him. And we get 5 garden hose whips across the butt. Now, getting the hit across the butt thing wasn't the problem. It was having to go get the own weapon to bring back to being corrected. And I can tell you, me and my brother aren't someone that's going to go out there and just start fighting with someone and start throwing fists. We're not somebody that's going to go out there and just start, you know, physically attacking people, because we know that stuff hurts. It does damage, you know. So, yeah, somebody from an outside perspective could say, well, that's abuse. No, man, because, you know, I'm a big guy. I could take it. Things heal. But that kind of stuff makes you stronger. It makes you understand what pain is, because at the end of the day, it's the experience. People go, oh wow, that's horrible, that's that. No, it's honestly what you learn most from life and the things you take away with yourself. And if we're young, we can argue it all we want, so let's talk about it when we're 65. But the negative things, the things that were hard in life, the things that you had to learn by struggle are the things that stick with you.
The greatest lessons
true.
come from pain.
And
That's
those
true.
things are what build your character. That's what makes you kind. That's what makes you humble. That's the stuff that really sticks out. Anybody in America can pretend, we should go occupy Wall Street, peace, love, man, this is going to solve everything. Yeah, the only reason you can think like that is because you live in America, where it's like, the cop's not going to come up there and just literally, just mow you down. Go try doing that in Thailand or China. You're going to get a totally different reaction, and then you can talk about corruption and just mistreatment. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen here, but I'm saying the majority of the people that sell this theory of love and peace and harmony are the people that have not experienced struggle, because that kind of stuff doesn't happen if you've really experienced life. There's a nice middle ground. There's a nice harmony of things. And peace, love, is not harmony. That is not harmony, because you need both sides of the equation, both sides of the vibration.
Balance.
Tell us what you really think, Jacob.
Right. Don't hold back.
Was that me?
I love it. I love it. Okay, so I want to bring it back to our guy beating up the priest thing.
He didn't find the balance.
He didn't find the balance. So the one question that I would have in everything that you said and about the guy and the priest, yeah, he waited till he was 44. Well, I guess if we're thinking in terms of linear time, yes. And we don't have enough information to go on. I suppose if we were sitting on the trial, we would have probably a little bit different perspective. He says he's prepared to take responsibility for anything he's been involved in. He's willing to do it. It's a small sacrifice to get this priest into court.
So, he just wanted to get him into court.
He just wanted to get him into court.
So this was
and
his way.
That was his way of doing it.
Interesting.
Yeah, because he felt that there was never justice served. So then that begs the question, is there ever justice?
I think the way we deal with society and the way our correctional system's set up, no, I don't think so.
I agree with that.
I just think it's one big system of making money off of everybody else's mistakes.
Monetizing sin.
Exactly, and that's all it is. I can tell you if I found out that my brother was molested by a priest and at age 45, I'd probably go raise hell. And, there probably wouldn't be anything that would stop me. But do I think the court system does anything useful? Absolutely not. Does it bring any justice? Absolutely not. I think the court system and our, it's great if that's what he tried to do and that's what he wants the outcome is. That, probably a smart way of doing it, but I don't think that that's going to solve anything nor give them justice, because I don't think, okay, we're going to step back and somebody will say, well, that didn't happen to you, so you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But the bigger question is, why didn't the church take care of it?
Well,
again, because you don't want more scandals where your leaders are doing this stuff to people that come into you with a subservient mindset, and that's where those churches do. They put you in that subservient mindset. You go in there humbly, and then you have these people that are supposed to be representing you on the scale to everybody globally. Then they start doing this stuff, and you don't.
What does that say about them?
maybe it is all about the money. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we come back with more of the broad perspective and our final segment of our visit with Jakub Dolezal. Stay tuned.
BPN. Join the awakening.
The Broad Perspective Network is a portal designed to reveal a new perspective and reality to those who wish to know the truth about the world we live in and our role in it.
BPN. See beyond the illusion.
Drop away. With a new voice, I met the dark knight and he gave me a choice. Either walk with the weak, never be at peace. Let my mind sink, watching my soul move. Instead I chose to pick up a weapon, unleash a pen. Knowing was a second love. Hate, human thoughts present, the drive that'll make you believe in a scent of all the angels fall from heaven. Cause it's just a billion souls praying with no one listening. Actions colliding, momentum reviving, forever we riding. Hip-hop began as a civil movement, building respect for those in the ghettos losing. Now it's coming back and the heart's beating with all my angels singing. We ride alone, we're staying high.
Welcome back to The Broad Perspective here on the Broad Perspective Network. I'm Vivian Komori.
And I'm Katie Curley Nelson.
And we're in the final segment of our visit with Jakub Dolezal, but he's kindly agreed to stay after when we record our next show, and he can be a guest on the 12th hour. So, we'll still have lots more to talk about.
And then you can actually speak your mind, because I know you've been holding back.
Really holding back.
And the music, as we entered this segment, was some of Jakub's from Momentum Musica, and he is a lyricist and quite a poet, I must say. Actually, I've listened to this. There's a couple tracks on here I really, really like, and I'm really impressed with your lyrics.
Thank you.
They're really, really insightful and very deep and very moving.
Thank you so much. A lot of that stuff, I have to say, was influenced by like Tupac Shakur, the guy that was killed in 1996. That's somebody that really heavily motivated me into going into music.
Really?
Yeah, because I see I learned from him the potential and what you can do with music and media. He was talking a lot about Illuminati and a lot of that stuff. He was mentioning it in his lyrics, and I didn't quite, I wasn't quite into the grasp of those things in 96. But to understand that stuff in 96, and people are just now getting into understanding Illuminati, that's really impressive. And what he was doing with music was just amazing. He was bringing gangs together in South LA. And I mean, his music really motivated a lot of people. And, he brought songs into talking about, underprivileged young women that are having kids and how they have to deal with society, to, being a young black male in society and dealing with the police and all that stuff. I mean, he really brought a lot of stuff into light. And a lot of that stuff, what really resonated with me is there's a lot of personal struggle, and you can hear it in his voice. Whether he acted out sometimes or didn't, people are going to act out. You're human. There's two sides to everybody, and that's what makes you interesting. But when you really get into the passion of someone, when you get into what really makes them tick, what really makes their soul go, what I heard from Tupac resonated with me absolutely, and that's why I wanted to get into media, and that's why I'm going to go for media again, with acting, directing, and music. I'm going to step outside, really studying this conspiracy theory stuff and some of this spiritual hierarchy stuff, to get back into what the core of what I'm about.
And you're going to do that through media.
I'm going to do that through media, because media guides culture straight up.
And so are you going to go back into composing more, or?
Well, what I'd love is if Joe would start making some more tracks and instrumentals, because that kid knows how to play the piano. It is amazing. However, I still have a few connections, and I have some friends that have really been writing me a lot. It's funny because I've been thinking about doing music, and the synchronicity of things has had friends write me a lot. Well, we need to do music again. We got to do music. Are you doing music? So I'm listening to the world, and I think that's where I want to get into. I got to kind of kickstart that and go at that full force and blitzkrieg style, and really, really make it happen, because I really think if the world wants something in an interesting direction, I really think I could push it that way, and I do it in my very upfront way. Yeah.
What is the message that you're trying to teach through your words and music?
When we get into that, it's I want people to know, or I even want me to know. I don't know if it's like, if one day I die and you come back, I don't know if reincarnation's real, but if it is, I want those kids, I want people to know that actually want to learn that there are people out there like them. I want people to know, and I want me to know, that there is knowledge out there, that there is potential, that the creativity of a person's mind can come to life. It's just about the desire and being at the right place at the right time. A few times in my life I've been at the right place at the right time, and I think it just wasn't the moment, because from what I've observed about people around in my world, I think my ego could have gotten in the way. I really think part of becoming a good leader and a good person to push ideas a certain way is being humble. And always know that you always have to question yourself. By no means do I think I'm absolutely right, because there's always something wrong. And, as you grow, there's always something that you're going to learn a little farther on that you're going to say, yeah, I probably wouldn't do that now, or I shouldn't do that now. Age really makes you wise, and a lot of young people don't want to admit that. But when you're changing from a teenager to a young 20-year-old to 30, the person you're becoming is completely different. Your values are completely different, and you're rethinking your own world because you start dealing with mortality and understanding that. So, what I think music could do, and what I'd want it to do isn't so much say, these guys are wrong and these guys are bad. It's not about that. It's critical thinking, understanding that everything's perspective. Out of all my years in college, and I went to college when I was 16, and I studied for a long time, I think till like 24, 25. I took just class after class. Is the one thing that resonated to me, and that was right before I got my degree. I was arguing with one of my teachers about German history, and there was a certain type of argument about a certain type of war. Not going to get into that. But after I just kept going passionate, and he's like, well, it doesn't matter because I want you to learn facts. And then I was like, why? Let's think about this. And he said, just remember, Jacob, everything that's ever been written has been written by man. And all of it is perspective. Nothing is ever fact. And that has stuck with me, and I think that's what sent me on my path.
Wow.
And that's what I want people to learn.
That's just what I was going to say. I think facts are actually subjective. So if they're subjective, they really aren't facts.
Exactly.
Are there really ever any facts?
Or is there a truth, though? See, that's where I get into. I think there is a truth, and then there's perspectives on that truth.
It's just scary believing in facts, because if there are certain facts that build your core in understanding this world, when they crumble, and they will eventually crumble, it can totally throw you off in your life's path. And that's what's scary about believing in facts and not critically thinking about them. Facts are, we'll just use facts for the term facts, but not in its all-out law of the world. Mm-hmm. But, what's nice about those is you have to begin understanding the world a certain way. And that's why those things are nice into play. But really, dates and times, those things are even subjective, because honestly, time really only affects us, not anything else.
Well, that's true. And it kind of brings us back full circle to how we opened our show and talking about the doubter or the hermit card. And it's about doubting. Don't be afraid to doubt when you're told something. Don't be afraid to question. Don't be afraid to ask yourself, is this really true to me? Is it really my truth? So.
And if somebody tells you, just believe it. Yeah. That's when you might want a red flag might want to go up.
Well, there you go.
You might want to think about it.
And Jacob, I do want to tell our listeners that if they want to learn more about you, they can go to mymomentummedia.com, correct?
Well, actually, it's if you go to YouTube, I have a lot of YouTube videos there. And my YouTube channel is all one word, and that's My Momentum Media, all spelt out.
Okay, that's on YouTube. Okay, there you go. We got that right now. So yeah, check out Jacob on YouTube, My Momentum Media, and listen to his music. I think now, could they also order your CD?
No, yeah, definitely they can. I'm going to set something up for that because I'm going to start getting back into the music hardcore. Okay. But, the best way is right now, just go to My Momentum Media on YouTube, and you can message me there, and we'll go from there. That's probably the easiest.
Okay,
right on. When you do get the new link, you can always give it to us, and we'll post it on the website.
Absolutely, yeah, we'll post it.
That'd be beautiful.
And then we'll move forward from there. So,
well, don't become a hermit.
Yeah, don't become a hermit. Yeah,
just for now, just for a day.
Just for a day.
Yeah.
Okay, and remember, it's all perspective. Join us in Broad News, same time, same place next week. And on the Broad Perspective Network is where you can listen to it live. And on the broadperspective.com, click on the archives, and you can listen to any of our past shows, and there are hundreds. So once again, Jacob, thank you for your time today. Stay tuned, because Jacob's going to stay and visit with us on the 12th hour.
Yay!
Thanks, everyone.
Would you like to have your very own radio show on the Broad Perspective Network? Well, now you can. Find out more at 661-480-6787. That's 661-480-6787 for your radio show on the Broad Perspective Network. check out The Philosophy of Me with Dennis Komori, Wednesdays at 9 a.m. For details on this show, go to thebroadperspectivenetwork.com.